I know the issue of the JFK assassination is a very big topic, and because of that, I'm going to make two videos on this topic. But the first thing I would like to do, and it's something that I think is very, very important. For me personally, I actually had to do my own research, not just on the JFK assassination, but on the many topics that I'm sharing with you in these videos. Each one of us has to do our own research. We need to have a thirst for knowledge and wisdom. Normally, truth is like treasure. You have to dig for it. It doesn't come to you whilst you're sitting, on your sofa or your couch watching TV. We don't get truth from our TVs whilst sitting there holding our remote controls. That's actually just propaganda. One of the many reasons why I don't watch TV. But so the point I'm trying to make is I believe in sharing information. And so I want to share with you some books, specifically, most of them anyways, specifically talk about the JFK assassination. So the first one I want to share with you is a book called The Secret Terrorist, written by Pastor Bill Hughes. He's an American who I've actually met personally. We've actually invited him, when I was in the UK, we invited him to the UK to preach. He wrote this very small pocket book. And one of the chapters in this book talks about the JFK assassination. Okay, in fact, Pastor Bill has actually been threatened by the Jesuits for writing this book. But that's one book which I'm actually going to refer to in this video later on. Another book which is quite good is JFK, The Last Dissenting Witness, written by Bill Sloan and Gene Hill. And Gene Hill was actually in Dealey Plaza on the day of the assassination, and she basically contradicts the official story, about what the government said actually happened on that day, because she was actually there. She was a witness. Okay. So another one, I think this is out of the books that I have, this is probably the best book I've read on the JFK assassination. So this is called, in case it's not very clear, it's Double Cross. Okay, not to be confused with Alberto Rivera's Double Cross, because Alberto Rivera, an ex-Jesuit, for those maybe who don't know who he was an ex-Jesuit who left the Jesuit order and actually exposed the Catholic Church quite a lot, and the Jesuits. He also wrote a book called Double Cross, but this is not by Alberto Rivera. This is by Sam and Chuck Giancana. The man you see here on the cover was involved with the mafia, and he said that he was also involved in setting up the assassination of JFK. Now, just a summary of this book. It basically says that the mafia actually helped JFK to get elected because Joe Kennedy, JFK's dad, was involved in making money from whiskey and all that. I think that's quite widely known. But Joe Kennedy wanted JFK to be elected president, and he needed the help of the mafia because already the elections in the US were already corrupted. So we're talking about the 1950s going into the 60s. Already elections in the US were already corrupted and manipulated. And it says in that book that the mafia helped JFK to get elected as president. But the problem the mafia had with JFK is that he then turned on them along with his brother, RFK. RFK went after the mafia really, really hard, which upset the mafia. So in terms of the reasons why JFK was assassinated, I'll cover that after I've finished sharing these books with you. But yeah, he said that the mafia was involved in JFK assassination, which I actually believe as well. But if you want to get that book, I'm not sure you can get it as a PDF. Some of these books, like The Secret Terrorist, this one here, you can get it as a PDF. I'm not sure about the others, but yeah, there are some which I'm going to share with you, which can be downloaded as PDF, because if you can get a book for free, it's obviously better than having to pay for it. But the only unfortunate thing is that I find physical books are better than PDFs. But if you can get it for free, then Yeah, it's a bonus. So this one here not doesn't mention anything about JFK, but this is Charles Chinukwi's book. Charles Chinukwi was a Roman Catholic priest who left the Catholic Church and started exposing the Catholic Church, and there were actually attempts to kill him as well. But basically, Charles Chinukwi became friends with Abe Lincoln even before he became president, because Abe Lincoln was a marked man even before he became president, because he helped. For those who don't know, Abe Lincoln was a lawyer, and he helped Charles Chinukwi when the Catholic Church were taking him to court, making false accusations against him. I think he was accused of sexual assault, which was false, because Charles Chinukwi, Charles Chinukwi, that's Charles Chinukwi there. He was promoting temperance. Okay, discouraging drinking and overeating and things like that. And the Catholic Church went after him and accused him of sexual assault. But then Abe Lincoln helped him in court and proved that the allegations against Charles Chinukwi were false. Okay, so because of that, Abe Lincoln became a marked man. In fact, it said that there were Jesuits in court that day who were very angry and upset that Charles Chinukwi had gotten away with the help of Abe Lincoln. So he was a marked man even before he became president. So in the book, Charles Chinukwi says that it's the Jesuits who were ultimately responsible for Abe Lincoln's assassination, of which it's a similar thing happened with JFK. Okay, ultimately it was the Jesuits, okay, in the Catholic Church that were responsible for his assassination. Let me just share with you some other books which I don't have as physical copies. We've got a book called Final Judgment. As you can see, this is a PDF, okay, by Michael Collins Piper, subtitled The Missing Link in the JFK Assassination Conspiracy. Okay. Then there's another one, JFK and the Unspeakable. The interesting thing about this book is that the author says that there was, and not only did JFK have a lookalike, J.D. Tippett, I think I might be mistaken, but JFK had a lookalike who was also assassinated on the same day that he was assassinated, and he said that their bodies were swapped, okay, to destroy evidence. But the other thing I wanted to mention, which I found very interesting, is that Lee Harvey Oswald also had a lookalike who went around doing certain things on the day of the assassination to make it look like Lee Harvey Oswald, who was in the book depository, was the one who actually assassinated JFK. But of course, Lee Harvey Oswald was just a patsy, and he said so himself on TV, that he had been set up. Lee Harvey Oswald worked for the CIA and had actually been to Russia, and then had come back from Russia, and he had been set up to be the fall guy who was to take the blame for the assassination. Then there's another book called JFK, the CIA, Vietnam, and the Plot to Assassinate John F. Kennedy. Something else you can get downloaded as a PDF. Then there's The Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty. Fletcher Prouty used to be in the military, as it says here. He was a colonel in the US Air Force. Obviously, by the time he wrote this, he was retired. But Fletcher Prouty is also the one who said that the oil that we get from the ground, crude oil, is not a fossil fuel. The whole thing of calling it a fossil fuel was to make it look like it's kind of a scarce resource that will run out one day. But Fletcher Prouty said that crude oil actually comes from rocks in the ground, and that they actually resupply themselves. They constantly produce this oil, but there's always been an agenda for decades to make it look like oil is about to run out, and it kind of makes the price of oil fluctuate. So that's what I wanted to share. Those are the books I wanted to share with you that you can read. Of course, there are many other books that have been written. In fact, recently I found another author who wrote a book on the JFK assassination, John Hamer. He also wrote this book here, which you can download as well, The Falsification of History, Our Distorted Reality. But he also wrote a book on the JFK assassination. Unfortunately, you have to buy that one. I couldn't find a PDF document of it. Something else I almost forgot to share is, I don't know if you can see that here. I don't want to open it because I don't want to play it. It's actually a video. It's called JFK to 9/11. Everything is a rich man's trick. It's a very good documentary. I don't necessarily agree with everything that's said in it, but yeah, a very good documentary to watch on the assassination. So here we have a quote from George Orwell, who said, "He who controls the past controls the future." Yeah, he who controls the past controls the future. How do you control the past? By rewriting history. And it's obviously been said many times that uh, it's the victors who write history, or something along those lines. Okay, but he who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. Those who are writing our history textbooks are controlling the past by changing the events, by giving us a false history of how things actually happened in the past. So even with the JFK assassination, even though I think almost everyone who was involved in the JFK assassination in 1963, 22nd of November 1963 to be more specific, I think almost everyone is dead, but they are continuing to cover up the assassination. Why? Because it shows that the president who is elected, not just in America, by the way, the reason why JFK was assassinated in broad daylight with cameras rolling was to show everyone involved in politics, especially presidents and prime ministers and kings and queens, that they can be removed from their positions. Okay. So what I was talking about, why the JFK assassination is still being covered up now, it's because if the truth came out, it would show that, presidents and prime ministers and those in leadership positions in different parts of the world can be removed. There's no one who is completely safe from being removed. There are other organizations and agencies that have the power to remove not just American presidents, but presidents and prime ministers and kings and queens, senators and congressmen in different parts of the world. Okay, the president does not have ultimate power; it can be removed. And in fact, I would go as far as saying, and this has been discussed on many podcasts, that JFK was the last real American president because he stood against the military-industrial complex, the CIA, and other organizations. And it's been said many times that JFK made a lot of enemies. Okay, he was the last real president. Why? Because he actually tried to be a president. He wasn't a puppet. Okay, and of course, most presidents, American and others around the world, want to pretend like they are really in charge, but they are not, because they can be removed at any time, which was the whole point of JFK being assassinated in broad daylight. They could have poisoned him, or they could have crashed his airplane as he was flying to Dallas, Texas, but they didn't. They actually allowed the whole thing of him being driven around in an open motorcade, and then for shots to be fired at him, to show that no one, no one is completely safe from these various organizations that I've mentioned, such as the CIA and the FBI and other organizations. Okay, so this quote here from George Orwell is talking about about history and our understanding of it and how it's being manipulated. So many history books have been they contain a false history. So even now, I think recently I heard of someone who was saying that they saw a textbook, a school textbook, that was talking about the scamdemic and talking about the scamdemic as if it was a real thing. That it was a scamdemic. There was actually nothing going on, but they are talking about it as if it was a real event. Okay, there's something else I want to share with you. So let's talk about the reasons why JFK was assassinated. Let's go here. Here. one of the reasons, okay, one of many reasons why he was assassinated. I think maybe I'll cover just 3 or 4 reasons why he was assassinated in this video. JFK said, "I will splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter." I think it's supposed to say scatter them into the wind. Sorry, let me just read that again. "I will splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind." I kind of misread that. Okay, scatter the CIA. You wanted to scatter, splinter and scatter the CIA into the wind. I think in other quotes, it will say, "I will shatter the CIA," which is the same thing. I'll shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. Okay, why this? JFK actually said this after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, where the CIA, they wanted to go into Cuba to remove Fidel Castro. Of course, Fidel Castro was also Jesuit trained as well. So I suppose maybe there was um, not everything that we're told about Fidel Castro, for instance, is true. Fidel Castro himself was Jesuit trained. I've got a book here somewhere in my house that talks about how Fidel Castro went to a Jesuit college. Um, so just that information alone just tells me that Fidel Castro was working for the Jesuits, okay, in everything he did. But at the same time, the CIA is an offshoot of the Jesuits, so I don't know exactly what was going on there. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but yeah. The point I was making was that JFK made this comment after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, where some rebels from Cuba had thought they could remove Fidel Castro with the help of the CIA, and the CIA had asked JFK to support them with planes, but JFK didn't send the help that they wanted. But it said that JFK took all the blame for the Bay of Pigs uh, failed invasion. But this is one of the reasons why the CIA wanted to remove him, and also because he had made this statement saying he was going to destroy the CIA. Okay, um, so let me just go to another reason why JFK had to be removed. We see here. Let me see if I can find it. So yeah, this is actually one of the reasons. Another reason, which perhaps not in the top 3 reasons, but yeah, it's definitely one of the reasons why he had to be removed. It says here, this is that book, The Secret Terrorist, which I showed you earlier. This is a PDF version of it, and so the page number is not very clear. So yeah, Secret Terrorist by Bill Hughes. It says here, when Kennedy called for a return of America's currency to the gold standard and the dismantling of the Federal Reserve System. Remember, we're talking of 1963, when Kennedy was assassinated. So this is after the Federal Reserve had already been set up. It was set up in December 1913. Okay, so he called for America's currency to return to the gold standard and the dismantling of the Federal Reserve. So he was basically going against the bankers. Remember how I said it's been said that JFK made many enemies? He was going after the bankers. He says let me just finish reading this and I'll make my comments. He actually minted non-debt money that does not bear the mark of the Federal Reserve when he dared to actually exercise the leadership authority granted to him by the US Constitution. Remember how I said that JFK wanted to be president. He wanted to actually use the authority given him as president. He wanted to actually be a real president. He says Kennedy, when he did that, when he wanted to exercise authority granted to him by the U.S. Constitution, Kennedy prepared his own death warrant. It was time for him to go. Colonel James Gritz called to serve. This is a book, obviously, that's being referred to here. So when Kennedy started talking about dismantling the Federal Reserve, it was time for him to go. Now, when staying on the issue of money and how Kennedy wanted to remove the Federal Reserve, let me just share something with you here. The executive order. Kennedy had actually signed an executive order 11110 on the 4th of June 1963. It says this order amended executive order 10.28.9 to delegate authority to the Secretary of the Treasury to issue silver certificates backed by silver bullion held in the U.S. Treasury rather than relying on Federal Reserve notes. Why did you not want Federal Reserve notes, what we call US dollars? Because they come with a lot of debt, okay? Which at this time I think America is 39 trillion in debt because what we call US dollars are actually there are notes printed by the Federal Reserve, which is a privately owned bank. Most of the shares in the Federal Reserve are owned by the Rothschilds, and of course, some of you will say, "You see, it's the Jews that are running things," because the U.S. dollar is printed by the Rothschilds. But well, they own some of the shares in the Federal Reserve, but some of the shares are also owned by the Morgan family. When I say Morgan family, I'm talking about J.P. Morgan's family, who built the Titanic. He owned a company called the White Star Line Company that built the Titanic, which then sank with the richest people in the world, some of whom were opposed to the setting up of the Federal Reserve. But yeah, the Rothschilds are keepers of the Vatican treasury, like F. Tapasosi said in his book Rulers of Evil. The Rothschilds are just like the Fuggers and the Medici. They are banking families that keep the purse of the Vatican. Okay, so they are simply keeping the money for the Vatican, who are really the ones ruling the world right now. So this order, Executive Order 11110, was actually reversed after JFK was assassinated. Also, an interesting fact is that Abe Lincoln was also part of the reason why he was assassinated. On top of the issue that he defended, Charles Chinquy when he was falsely accused. Abe Lincoln also went after the bankers, and there were other U.S. presidents who also made enemies or were hated by the bankers in America. You have to bear in mind that there were two other attempts to set up a federated banking system in America, and the first two attempts actually failed because basically they lapsed. This time we've had the Federal Reserve has been around for over a century, and there's actually a very good documentary which was made by what's his name, James Corbett from the Corbett Report. He made a documentary called A Century of Enslavement, speaking of at that time the Federal Reserve had been around for a century, so that's what he was referring to as a century of enslavement. Because of course the Federal Reserve creates what's called debt slavery. Okay, now I don't know if I've covered everything so I've covered. Let me just look for something else that I want to share with you in regards to why JFK was assassinated. Okay, in fact here. JFK made a very interesting comment with regards to. Oh, here we have it here. Regards to his relationship with the Catholic Church. In 1960, John Kennedy went from Washington to Texas to assure Protestant preachers that he would not obey the Pope. Yeah. So, there are some who argue that JFK wasn't assassinated by the Jesuits, or he wasn't assassinated by the Catholic Church because he was Catholic himself. But yeah, he disobeyed the Catholic Church. Okay. In 1960, John Kennedy went from Washington to Texas to assure Protestant preachers that he would not obey the Pope. But in 2001, George Bush, and I believe this is referring to George Bush Jr., came from Texas up to Washington to assure a group of Catholic bishops that he would obey the Pope. This is Washington Times, April 16, 2001. In fact, when you look for this quote here online, it will tell you that George Bush never said this. Of course, there's a lot of censorship on when you use when you use search engines. There's some information that's not coming up anymore, but I'm just glad that we actually have this. So once again, this is from the Secretariat. Okay, unfortunately, it doesn't show the page number very clearly, but this is in the chapter where that talks about JFK's assassination. So maybe if I can just look that up. Um, yeah, there was also Andrew Jackson as well, who was also assassinated for going against the bankers in America. There was also Harrison, Taylor, and Buchanan. These are all presidents from America who either were assassinated or had assassination attempts. But the chapter that is chapter 8 that talks about JFK, and it starts from page 84 onwards in the secretaries. Okay, just trying to think of another reason why JFK had to be removed, but let me just go down here and see if anything comes up. So yeah, you see that it's also talking about in the same chapter where it talks about JFK, it's talking about George Bush quite a lot because George Bush actually did as he was told, but John F. Kennedy had to be removed because he was going against the world order. That's why many presidents are removed. When you see a president dying in very suspicious circumstances, for instance, what happened during this pandemic that we had Magufuli from Tanzania, who had actually said that COVID was a scam because he asked the doctors in Tanzania to test the PCR on goats, on papaya, and on motor oil, and all those things came back positive. I think he tested some other things as well, and everything came back positive for COVID. And basically, he was trying to show that COVID was a scam. And then soon afterwards, he died. And then we had President Nkurunziza, if that's how you say his name, from Burundi, who was also against the COVID scam, and he also died suspiciously. And we had President Moise, I forget his full name, but from Haiti, who apparently also went against this pandemic, and he also died suspiciously as well during the time we were having this pandemic. Jovenel Moise, former president of Haiti, he also died as well in very suspicious circumstances. What's another reason? Of course, we have got the issue of the CIA. He wanted to remove the CIA. I've covered that. He wanted to uh, remove the Federal Reserve, which was printing money out of nothing, causing Americans to go into debt. And he was against. I think it's in the Secretaries here somewhere. He was against the war in Vietnam. Yeah, it's not coming up, but I did look it up earlier. Let's see if we can find it. See here. Yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you, Jesus. It says here, President Kennedy sent 2 aides to Vietnam. These 2 aides were McNamara and Taylor, who gathered intelligence that convinced him that the United States needed to withdraw from Vietnam. Their memo to the president was entitled Report of McNamara-Taylor Mission to South Vietnam. With this report in hand, President Kennedy had what he wanted. It contained the essence of decisions he had to make. He had to get re-elected to finish programs set in motion during his first term. He had to get Americans out of Vietnam. You see that? This is from Fletcher Prouty's book that I referred to earlier. JFK, the CIA, Vietnam, in the plot to assassinate JFK. Remember, I showed you this earlier. JFK, the CIA, Vietnam, the plot to assassinate. That's from Fletcher Prouty. But there's another book here. I think there's another book I referred to. Yeah, The Secret Team is also by Fletcher Prouty. I think Hayden showed you who wrote this one here. This Fletcher Prouty. introduction by Oliver Stone. I don't really trust Oliver Stone. I know he made a very good movie about the JFK assassination, but there's some other things I've heard about him or seen about him that just makes me not trust him. So let me just go back here and see if I've covered everything about why. Another reason why JFK needed to be removed was he was opposed to this war in Vietnam. Okay. I think I've read it here. Yeah, sorry, maybe I hadn't quite read it. As President Kennedy began to de-escalate American involvement in Southeast Asia, this superpower group was planning his murder. Which superpower group? Fletcher Prouty tells us that on November 22, 1963, the government of the United States was taken over by the superpower group that wanted an escalation of the warfare in Indochina and a continuing military buildup for generations to come. And of course, yeah, that's kind of when this forever wars really started. We know that America, of course, was involved in World War One and World War Two, which were all based on lies. Because remember, the art of war says all warfare is based on deception. But I think after Kennedy was assassinated, this is when we really, America really started getting involved in these forever wars. So Kennedy wanted to escalate the war, to de-escalate American involvement in the war in Southeast Asia, mainly Vietnam, but also Cambodia. So what is this superpower group? I would say it's the military industrial complex, who are obviously taking the orders from the Jesuit order, which is the military organization of the Catholic Church. The Latin name of the Society of Jesus is Regimini Militantis Ecclesiae. Okay, the military regiment of the Catholic Church. They are the ones who were basically giving the orders. So yeah, I think I've covered about 3 reasons why he was assassinated. Maybe in part 2 I might cover something else about that. But also, if you go to the extreme oath of the Jesuits, it says here, when a Jesuit of the minor rank is to be elevated to command, he is conducted into the chapel of the convent of the order, where there are only 3 others present, the principal or superior standing in front of the altar. On either side stands a monk, one of whom holds a banner of yellow and white, which are the papal colors, and the other a black banner with a dagger and a red cross above a skull and crossbones, with the word INRI. And sometimes when you see drawings or paintings of Jesus, so-called Jesus on the cross, you see the words INRI above his head. It says, and below them the words, I won't say these words here, I'm not sure if I can read them, Ustem Neca Regis Impius, the meaning of which is, these words here are the ones represented by this abbreviation INRI. Okay, the meaning of INRI is it is just to exterminate or annihilate impious or heretical kings, governments, or rulers. So does this include Catholic rulers? Yes, it does. Because why does it include Roman Catholic presidents and prime ministers? Because if they don't take orders from the Jesuits and the Pope, then they are deemed to be heretical. Okay. It says, upon the floor is a red cross at which the postulant or candidate kneels. The superior hands him a small black crucifix, which he takes in his left hand and presses to his heart, and the superior at the same time presents to him a dagger, which he grasps by the blade and holds the point against his heart. The superior still holding it by the hilt, and thus addresses the postulant. Okay, I won't read the rest of this, but the main part I wanted to read is this part about INRI. What does that mean? It is just to exterminate or annihilate impious or heretical kings, governments, and rulers. Okay, that includes American presidents and governments in America. If they go against the Catholic Church, they will be removed. In fact, in Charles Tinuki's book, it says that if the whole world went against the Catholic Church, there's a priest who said to hell with the whole world. The Catholic Church is willing to go to war against the whole world in order to achieve their agendas. Let me share some other stuff with you here, which shows that presidents can be removed, and the popes say that presidents who disobey them should be removed. So here you see that Queen Elizabeth I, who was Protestant, It says Pope Gregory VIII explicitly stated that killing Elizabeth I was not murder, but a pious act that gained merit. In fact, the Catholic Church teaches that it is not murder to kill a heretic. Okay, and Elizabeth I was classed as a heretic. Why? Because she was a Protestant who promoted Protestantism in England, of which Protestantism is basically belief in the Bible is God's word and the only rule of faith for Christians. It says here Pope Pius in February 1570, Pope Pius V declared that Elizabeth was a heretic, someone whose belief challenged the Catholic Church. I think I just want to show you loads of proof here. You can go and look this up later in your own time. Here it says that someone declared her to be a heretic. I don't know what that is. I suppose I assume it's the Pope. But we've already seen that Gregory the Eighth stated that killing Elizabeth I was not murder. In the same way that there are some who believe that killing JFK would not be murder. Okay. Yeah, kind of read this earlier. Okay. This Pius V promulgated a bull which excommunicated Elizabeth, Queen of England, for allegedly embracing errors. Of course, they say that believing what the Bible says is error. The Pope had just excommunicated Elizabeth, condemning her as a heretic. And it said that there were about a dozen attempts to assassinate Elizabeth I, all which failed. But I have read somewhere also that someone might have put poison on her saddle, on Queen Elizabeth I's saddle, that would be absorbed into her body when she sat on it. There are some who allege that that's eventually how they got her. I don't know if that's true or not. Perhaps more evidence will come out as time goes on. You know that time is the great revealer of truth. Okay, let me see if I've got anything else here to share. No, let me just go back here. About popes deposing kings. Of course, before I forget, we had Henry IV of Germany, who was excommunicated by the Pope, and he had to go all the way to the Pope's residence. I can't remember if it was in the Vatican, because the Pope's residence has moved. There were times when the Pope's residence was actually in France, but of course now it's been permanently in the Vatican, in St. Peter's Basilica, for hundreds of years. But he had to travel from Germany to the Pope's residence to ask for forgiveness, and he stood in the snow barefoot for about 3 days before the Pope would address him and pardon him. So it says here, yes, during the Middle Ages, the Pope claimed and exercised the papal deposing power. So can the Pope remove a king? Not just a king, but a president. It says the popes and canon lawyers say yes, but they are merely theologians. Now, the popes have exercised this power before. The Pope and Church were elevated to such a degree that the Bishop of Rome now claimed the authority to excommunicate or depose kings and presidents, okay, and prime ministers. So yeah, the papacy and of course the popes wear a crown, a triple crown, basically, in their inauguration, showing that they rule the whole world. They believe that they rule heaven, earth, and the underworld. So that would include having the authority to rule over presidents, including American presidents. Okay, let's have a look here to see if there's anything else before I end the video. Yeah, so they believe that killing a heretic is not murder. That includes presidents who do not obey the Pope. And Thomas Aquinas, so-called, one of the doctors of the Catholic Church, said, says here, so-called saint, I don't know why they call him saint, Thomas Aquinas and various secular authorities argued that killing heretics was not murder, but a justified act of secular justice to protect the community, reasoning that corrupting the faith, which kills the soul, was a graver crime than forging money or murder. Okay. I think that's everything I wanted to share in this video. I'll share some more with you next time, God willing, which will be part two. So once again, any questions, put them in the comment section of the video. But yeah, and also for those, you know, perhaps who know of any very good books about the JFK assassination and any issues linked to the JFK assassination, or maybe the assassination of other American presidents, please share them in the comment section of the video, because I really believe in sharing information. That's one of the ways in which we can grow mentally and spiritually. Don't keep information to yourself, okay? But I'll do a part two, God willing, next time. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.